Hello, chess fans. Welcome to another edition of Chess Chat, a program designed to give you, the viewer, a good understanding of the fascinating world of chess. I'm George Meridanian, Program Director of the Wachusett Chess Club at Fitchburg State University. This club meets every Wednesday evening from 7 to 11 in room C-159 in the McKay Complex at the university. And with me today at the Fitchburg Access Television Production Center is once again our award-winning director, Darren Dame at Fitchburg. He's assisted in the control room by fellow resident and longtime Wachusett Chess Club member, Brian Bigelow. And behind the camera, following all the action, is longtime FATV volunteer, Andy Hawthorne. And across from me is my trusty co-host, dedicated associate, noted chess author, and strong chess player, Dave Couture of Westminster. Hello, Dave.
Hi, George.
Well, Dave, today's program is a dedication or tribute to the world's oldest living Grandmaster, and he is Russian Grandmaster Yuri Averbakh.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Yuri Averbakh just turned 97 early last month. In fact, he was born on February 8th, 1922 in Kaluga, Russia. Now, that's a city in Russia. Right now, it has it's a good-sized city, over 300,000 people.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that's where he was born, 97 years ago. His father was a German Jew. The family's name was really Auerbach, a German name, Auerbach. Mm-hmm. The father was German, Jewish, but his mother was Russian, Eastern Orthodox Christian. Yeah, but that's who his parents were, and he learned the game of chess at the age of 7, and he got involved in chess with the local chess club. Eventually moved to Moscow, and in 1949 he made a name for himself in 1949 when he was, he would have been 27 years old.
Yeah.
He won the Moscow City Championship, and that was quite an accomplishment because you had super strong players living in Moscow, and he won it in 1949.
Yeah.
2 years later, 1951, he won the championship of the Soviet Union, the Soviet Championship, which was even a phenomenal, success. What happened the year after that, 1952, the World Chess Federation awarded him the title of International Grandmaster in 1952. Now, in 1951, when he won the Soviet Championship, they awarded him the title of International Master, but the following year, they gave him the Grandmaster title. Okay. So he is a player who has played basically all the world champions, ever from Max Euwe, the Dutch champion who defeated Alexander Yelchin. He's played them all.
Yep.
And he has a plus record against 2 of them. There are 2 world champions that Yuri Averbakh has plus records against, and that's Max Euwe of Holland, and Tigran Petrosyan, who, by the way, came to Fitchburg. Remember, Petrosyan was here in Fitchburg in late February 1982, performing a simultaneous exhibition at the St. Joseph Club in Clegon. So against those 2 world champions, he had plus records. He's played them all.
Yep.
He is considered one of the world's leading authorities on endgames. Chess is divided into 3 parts: opening, middle game, end games.
Right.
He is, if not the leading authority on endgame play.
Well, you were telling me he published a multi-volume work on the endgame?
On endgames, on minor piece endings, rook and pawn endings, pawn, queen and pawn. Yes, he covered all the bases as far as chess endgames. Now, it was actually 8 years ago, 2011, that he visited New England. He came to New England and went to the chess club of Fairfield County in Norwalk, Connecticut, and didn't perform any simultaneous exhibition there, What he did was actually gave a talk. It was a sort of a lecture. And he presented endgame studies, puzzles for the audience, for them to solve.
Yep.
But they recorded actually his interview. He was interviewed, peppered with questions. And there's one story I want to tell about. He told at the chess club. This is when he was a schoolboy in Moscow. Mm-hmm. He had to go to the dentist one day. He was at school, but he had to be called away to be sent to the dental clinic because of pain in his teeth. So he went to the dental clinic, but he had to wait so long. He waited there so long at the dental clinic that his pain went away. So he's decided, well, I'm not going back to school, and I'm not going back home. Yep. He said, I decided I'd go to the chess club. Playing hooky, basically, from school.
This is Moscow?
Moscow.
Yeah.
He's a school.
So there's a chess club, right?
Chess club. In fact, the big chess club in Moscow was the Moscow Central Chess Club, which had, top players. Well, he went to the chess club, and guess whom he found at the chess club? None other than the great Russian composer Sergei Prokofiev. By the way, we did a program on Sergei Prokofiev.
Really?
Visiting Maurice Ravel in France. Actually in the archives, among Chess Chat, we did a program. Our director Darren Dame well remembers it because it was we gave some music by Ravel, but they met. Ravel and Prokofiev met. We did a program. Anyways, I digress. He met Prokofiev at the chess club. And Prokofiev asked the boy, the little Averbakh, whether he'd like to play a game or two. Yep. They sat down, played. Averbakh lost the first game. Now they played the second game, and Averbakh knew he had the upper hand in the second game, that he was winning. Yep. It was at that point that Prokofiev suggested that they adjourn the game. He says, let's postpone this game and come back tomorrow, and we'll finish off the game.
And Averbakh was what you said, 7?
Yeah. Well, he was older than 7. Oh. Yeah. Okay. This is old. He must have been probably young teens.
Young teens.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyways, he learned the game at 7, but again, this is much later. Yep. But he was still going to school. So Averbakh said, "Okay, we'll come back. I'll come back tomorrow. We'll finish off the game." Well, Averbakh went to the chess club the following day, and no sign of Prokofiev. So Prokofiev knew that he probably had a lost game and chose not to show up. Anyway, that's a funny story. Yeah. As I say, not only was he, an international grandmaster, but he was also an international arbiter. Now, what does an arbiter do? What does an arbiter do in chess? Well, they direct tournaments.
Right.
So he was able to also in 1960.
Like a referee.
It was a referee, like a referee. Yeah. So the World Chess Federation awarded him the title of international arbiter in 1969. Yeah. So he did a lot of things as far as he was an author, chess author, a writer. He also contributed to opening theory. There are a number of some openings, like the King's Indian defense, and also the modern defense, known as the Pierce defense, that he contributed a lot of theory to those openings. Okay. So he was a very accomplished player, and still, he's now the world's oldest living grandmaster, living in Moscow at the age of 97.
And I was realizing I didn't know that much about him, and part of the reason is he probably reached his peak before I was even born. So.
Oh yeah, his really peak years were the 1950s and 60s. Yeah, he really dominated chess during those periods. Yeah. Now I'm gonna also quote from this interview that he gave. He feels that chess is being taught wrong nowadays. Chess is viewed as a war game. Mm-hmm. It's a battle of armies. You got the white army, the black army. He said, no, this chess should not be taught like that. It should be taught, for example, that the chessboard is not a battlefield. It's a stage. It's a theater. It's a theater. It's actually you're performing some sort of play. It could be a comedy. It could be a tragedy. It could be even a ballet of the pieces.
Right.
He says, especially girls. We have very few females, girls and women. Very few of them play the game of chess. And he says that's because girls don't like to fight. He says, girls by nature are not fighters. Yeah. He says, but if you teach the game of chess as an art form, that's actually what you're doing is you're performing some sort of art. You know, he says that has a better chance of clicking with females. Yeah. By the way, there are a lot of people, I included, who view chess as both as an art, a science, a sport. I mean, don't you agree that chess encompasses all those elements of art, science, and sport? And by the way, I've always maintained this. I astound people when I tell players who don't play chess, people who don't play chess. I said, chess. There are more books written about chess than all the sports put together. Yeah. I mean, you take baseball, basketball, football, hockey, golf, tennis. Yeah. All the books that have been written about all these sports in any language, they pale in comparison to what has been written about chess. Mm-hmm. Yeah, chess dominates literature as far as in the libraries, in the literature. Yeah, so it's really dominant. Now, Dave, what we're going to present to our viewers today is a game that Yuri Averbakh played in 1951. It was a correspondence game. Right. It wasn't an over-the-board game in a tournament, but it was a postal game. Right. And he played it against a player by the name of Friedstein. Now, I believe there were two players with the name Friedstein, Russian players. One was German Friedstein, and the other one was Grigory Friedstein. Mm-hmm. And here are some photos of, here's actually Averbakh. He's probably in his late 80s here, or early 90s, but this photo was taken of him. But the game that we present was in 1951, and I believe that he played German Friedstein. That is my assumption, based on the fact that German Friedstein also was interested in chess theory. So I think they probably were experimenting with the different variations of openings. So in this correspondence game played in 1951, Averbakh had white. What did he open the game with?
He opened with e4. We've seen that a lot. That's the most common opening move.
Okay. And Friedstein responded with c5. Okay, now what is this? We have shown this before. What is this? Sicilian defense. Yep. Okay. Probably the most popular defense, most commonly played defense against the e4 move. Okay, so second move for Averbakh.
Knight f3, developing the knight.
Okay, this is commonly played. And this is what Black did on the second move. Could have played one of the pawns, either e6 or d6, but he played knight c6, a logical move, developing a piece. Okay, third move for Averbakh. What does he play?
He plays d4, opening up the line for the bishop to develop.
Okay, in response to that, Black now captured the pawn on d4. Right. The c pawn takes the d pawn, c takes d4. Okay, so he plays that. And Averbakh responds with?
He plays knight takes d4.
Okay.
So now Black has the two central pawns versus White's one.
All right. Now, Black now plays his knight on g8 to f6. Knight f6 attacks the pawn on e4.
Right, which is undefended, so Averbakh plays knight c3 to defend the pawn.
All right. Black, in response to that, plays the pawn d6. Plays the pawn up to d6, okay, which now opens up the diagonal for the light squared bishop.
Right.
All right, what does White do now?
So White develops the dark squared bishop to g5.
Okay. Now, there could be a possible threat of that bishop on g5 taking the knight on f6 and doubling these pawns.
Sure, yep.
So in order to avoid doubled pawns, Black, Friedstein, plays the pawn up to e6. Okay, so that was his move. What does Averbakh do now?
So now he plays queen to d3.
Now, you told me something about this move. As far as
in the databases, this queen to d2 was played like 91% of the time, I think.
Yes, yeah, the most commonly played move.
Most commonly played move. Yeah. But and this was only played like 2% of the time, queen to d3.
Okay. Now when you told me about this move, I did some research.
Yep.
And I found out who championed this move, who introduced this move into play, was none other than the great Estonian Grandmaster Paul Keres.
Okay.
Paul Keres actually played this move, and he played this in the early 1950s. But it really didn't become that popular. I mean, now it's rather strange to put the queen here, shutting in the bishop.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. But again he's vacating the D1 square because you see the plan actually. It looks like white has the opportunity to castle queenside,
which is typical in the Sicilian.
Right. Even if the queen had gone to D2, that's still going to be the plan for white. But the queen is on D3, and what Friedstein did was just continue with his development, playing bishop to E7. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So what does Averbakh do now?
So now, as you were saying, white castles queenside.
Okay. So if white castle queenside, black now can castle kingside.
Right.
And that's what he did.
And this is typical of the Sicilian, where white's going to advance pawns here to attack on the king side. Black's going to advance pawns here to attack on the queen side.
Now you know this opening. It has a name. It's a Sicilian defense, but there's a variation. This is known as the Richter-Rouser attack. It's named after two players who contributed to the theory of this variation. There was a German master by the name of Kurt Richter of Berlin, Germany, and then there was also a Russian master by the name of Vsevolod Rouser. Rouser also contributed to the theory. So chess players around the world know this variation as the Richter-Rouser attack. Okay. So what does white do now? It's actually move number 9 coming up.
9, he plays F4.
Okay.
So he's already starting the attack on the king side.
All right, F4. So here is where Friedstein takes the knight on D4. Knight takes D4 is his move, and white's next move is automatic.
Takes back, queen takes D4.
All right. All right, so we see what white's plan here is kingside attack.
Right.
Black's play is going to be queenside.
Right.
So he plays queen A5, brings the queen over to the queen side.
Yep.
All right. What does Averbakh do in response to queen A5? Which is rather strange now. This next move, I find this very strange that he now retreats.
Queen D2.
Yeah. This is actually puzzling to me why he chose to retreat, bring the queen back here. But here is what black did in response to queen D2. He says, I don't like that bishop there.
Right.
I'm going to attack it with H6. The pawn goes to H6, attacks the bishop. Now, a lot of players we know would retreat the bishop, save the bishop.
Or
exchange. Right. Either take the knight on F6 or bring the bishop back to H4.
Right.
But what did Averbakh do? Averbakh plays
H4.
Well, wait a minute. He's now offering black the opportunity to take that bishop, win the bishop.
Right.
But did black do that after H4? Well, he didn't.
He didn't.
He didn't. What he did instead is he played knight on F6, takes on the pawn on E4. Knight takes E4 is what black played.
Right.
And how did Averbakh respond to that?
He recaptured with his knight. Knight takes E4.
Knight takes E4, okay. All right, well now, black sees, wait a minute, he's got a queen under attack, and he could have actually retreated the queen, but he said, okay, we'll exchange queens.
Yeah.
Queen takes D2, queen takes D2, check. Okay, what does Averbakh do now?
So white needs to recapture. He recaptures with the rook.
Takes with the rook.
Makes sense.
Okay, it's at this point the black decides, okay, I'm going to take that bishop now and take it. Although remember, he sacked the knight. He sacked his knight, but he's getting his minor piece back by taking H. Takes the bishop on G5. All right.
Right.
So
the problem with that is that so white's going to recapture this way. H takes G5.
Yes. So what?
This nice open file for attacking.
Yes, that's right. So it does open up that H file.
So a possibility that he could have done was
with that bishop,
the white bishop here.
What could he have done with the?
He could have reattacked here, so he could capture this way. Now, once he does this, the bishop is trapped.
It's
He
trapped.
can't go anywhere.
Right.
Now he can capture this way and not open up.
Yes.
This
So
file.
that would have been a much
Yeah.
better move. Yeah. In
Right.
fact, that would have been
So-
much better. Okay, but he did it this way. All right.
Right.
So in response to this recapture, h takes g5 by white, black now plays f5, comes up, attacks the knight.
The knight.
Okay. What does Averbakh do now? Now he could have actually taken en passant. I don't know if we want to get into en passant.
Yeah.
No. Right now we have to deal with the knight under attack. White's knight
Right.
has, okay.
And this is interesting to me. I mean,
Yeah.
I think, I would have thought, okay, my knight's attacked, I'm going to retreat it here. I'm
Right,
gonna
right.
Retreat it here. He didn't. He takes the pawn there
Right, on d6.
on d6.
Knight takes d6, okay. Now, what black did not do, black did not take that knight with the bishop.
Right.
Because that would actually, he wants to pin that knight, threatening to win it. By bringing the rook over to d8, he's got a two pieces attacking the knight,
right.
threatening to...
Yeah, I was forgetting that the rook was guarding the knight, so it's not so strange.
No, it's not so strange at all. Yeah, because
Yeah.
the rook is guarding the knight on d6. Okay, so what does Averbakh do after...
Now this is the really interesting move.
Okay.
We had found one game played from this position previously.
Yes.
And in that game, the knight just retreated.
Back there.
Normal looking move. He's probably
Right.
thinking he's going to come here.
Yep.
But instead, Averbakh
Found a better move.
sacrifices the knight.
He's sacrificing the knight. Yeah, actually he is, right, exactly.
Yeah.
However, but now the knight is attacking the bishop.
Right.
Okay. Now, he could have actually in response to this, taken this, could he
could
not?
have taken it, yeah.
He could have, yes, actually could have won the knight.
Yeah.
But he didn't do that, did he? No. What he did, and this, I'm wondering why he chose not to take that knight. Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking he takes the knight. He's
Yeah.
probably worried about this pawn coming in here.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
Shutting
in, and then if we're able to, okay, yes. Oh, yeah, especially with the, oh, yes. Oh, we have a problem with the bishop with
Yeah.
the check there. Okay.
And then the rook coming down.
Yes, okay. That's why he chose not to take the knight. Instead, rook takes the rook on d2. Rook takes d2 was black's response. Rook takes d2, move 14.
Which is typically something you do. If you're under attack, you like to exchange pieces.
Right,
right. Reduce the numbers of the attackers.
Okay, all right. But here is what Averbakh did.
Instead of taking back,
He's not going to take back.
He could have taken
He's got
back.
a little, here's what we call a Zwischenzug, an in-between move.
in-between move.
Knight takes the on e7, check.
First, right.
The king, and the king only has to move, and the king comes up to f7,
Yeah.
attacks the knight,
Yeah.
but of course his rook is also
Right.
under attack, but he had to move out of check.
So now white grabs the rook on d2.
King takes d2. All right, now, black did not take the knight on e7.
Yeah.
Now we should tell our viewers why he chose not to take it. He could have actually just taken the knight, but you know why he chose not to take that knight? If we're fixed on this board, I'm sure he did not want to take the knight because he didn't want this rook coming down here and pinning, just paralyzing and allowing this bishop now. I mean, I'm sure that was probably the reason why he chose.
Right. Right.
But I think this is interesting that he chose not to do this. He could have. I mean, he could have actually taken that knight.
Yep.
But I guess he did not want this be paralyzed here with that pin on the bishop. So instead, what he did was play bishop. He said, "Okay, I'll play the bishop to d7. Now I can threaten to take that knight."
Right. Now the
It's
rook can get out.
The rook now can move. Yeah.
Right.
Not be pinned. The bishop cannot be pinned. Okay. What did white do now? What did Averbakh do now?
Plays rook h7.
Okay. All right.
So now,
Yes.
one of the things he's threatening is to push this pawn.
Ooh, yes, exactly. So again, he still doesn't want to take here because he doesn't want to have this pawn taken with check.
Right.
All right. So what Friedstein did after the rook, the h7, he says, okay, I'm going to bring this rook on a8 over to e8, and I'll let the rook take the knight on the next move.
Right.
Okay, but that was a mistake. Instead,
I don't think he had much choice.
No.
But so Averbakh plays f5 on his 21st move.
Right, okay, so f5. And now black says, okay, well now I can take the knight with the rook. Okay. However, there are problems.
Right.
Rook takes here, so he gets his piece back.
Right.
But what does Averbakh do in response to that?
So now he pushes f6.
Attacks the rook. He cannot take that pawn on f6 with the pawn on g7 because it's pinned.
Right.
So he realizes
he's in trouble.
He's in trouble. If he brings the rook back, he's going to lose the pawn with check here, and he'll lose this bishop.
Right.
In response, so he says, okay, what I will do is I will play the king to g8, attack your rook, let you take my rook on e7 because my bishop will stop you from queening a pawn on e8.
Right.
That's what black.
His hope. That was his hope. Yeah.
That he said that he was expecting a rook exchange. White takes the rook here, black takes the rook here, and he stops any queening of any pawn. However, he overlooked something.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he had much choice at that point. He's in trouble anyway.
Right.
But Averbakh plays g6.
Right.
Guarding the rook.
Right.
You know, this one's still threatened.
Right.
You know, if the rook moves back.
Right. Then we have actually.
He's got lots. You know, he could take here.
Or he could actually set up he could also set up by pushing the pawn. Push. Yeah. And then
the king has to move over.
Right.
And he takes.
Yes. Right. Yeah. So in this position after g6, which is here's the position.
Yeah.
Black resigned. He realizes this is a lost position.
Hopeless, yeah.
So he gave up on this right here. Okay. So, anyways, this is a game played 1951, correspondence, and
you don't find many short correspondence games because
very rare.
Because people have days to look over the position.
Very rare indeed. Now, in the few minutes we have left in our program, I want to bring to the attention of our viewers someone of note, someone local, a Fitchburg resident, longtime Fitchburg resident, who passed away this past Thursday at the age of 91. The colorful, interesting Jerry Martel. Now I bring up Jerry Martel because Jerry Martel was an avid chess player. In fact, he at the times I used to see Jerry, he always talked about, he loved watching Chess Chat. He was an avid viewer of Chess Chat.
Did he ever come to the club?
No, he never came to the club, but he talked chess. We talked chess, you know. And again, he did a program. There's a program that FATV is going to be showing. It's also on FATV's Facebook, which Jerry talks about his career as far as, you know, he owned Fitchburg Music Store.
Okay.
He also he was a car appraiser. He knew everything about automobiles. He actually wrote a column in the Sentinel Enterprise called Autobiography. He talked about cars. He was very knowledgeable about automobiles, but he loved chess. Chess was actually one of his passions, and we talked about chess. So we're going to miss Jerry. His funeral is planned, I believe, for Friday, March 22nd at the Brandon Funeral Home. They haven't released all the details of this funeral, but that's coming up. But I wanted to mention that to our Chess Chat viewers, that we've lost actually probably a chess, an icon, a legend. A legend in Fitchburg was Jerry Martel. So we're going to miss Jerry and miss his watching Chess Chat. So Chess Chat fans, we hope you enjoyed the game that Dave and I presented to you. Yuri Averbakh, the world's oldest living Grandmaster. We'll see you next time on Chess Chat.